There was one time when I was in high school where I did this portrait of a Michael Jackson playing when he was a kid, and I was told not to put that in because it was a picture I clearly didn't take because the photo is 25 years older than I am. And so and so my teachers told me to take it out, don't put it in there as much as I wanted to. And it was sad because it was the best painting I'd ever done at the time. And looking back, knowing what I know now, that was a really good decision. And yeah, so that was my close encounter, close call.
Which leads us to one of the common mistakes, which is putting in a portrait of a celebrity. Now, the thing about a lot of the things we're going to tell you guys not to do, a lot of this is really specific to art school portfolios. So there's nothing in here that we're saying you should never, ever do this. I mean, I would just cry if I couldn't draw Benedict Cumberbatch again. And so there's a place for these things, but your Game of Thrones drawing does not belong in your art school portfolio. Lauryn, why do you think they don't like to see this?
These people, these celebrities specifically that show up in portfolios, say something about the celebrity, but they don't really say anything about you as an artist. Usually in your portfolio, you're wanting to flex your creative and compositional muscle and conceptual muscle in there, and drawing a celebrity doesn't really take advantage of that part of making an artwork.
Exactly. So it's hard, I also think, with a celebrity image to really have your voice come through because Benedict is so distracting and I'm just not thinking about anything else when I look at him. So you don't want your admissions officers to get distracted, right? So that's the first thing to consider. Fan art in anime is definitely not something you want to put into your art school portfolio. Why do you think that is, Jordan?
It's for a similar reason that Lauryn just mentioned. And when you're creating fan art, it's automatically kind of assumed that this character is not your own character. It's not your creation. And so when you are doing art like this and putting in your portfolio and saying, this is what I have to offer, and they see it and they say, well, he or she is just copying other stuff that's already out there, I think it ends up diminishing the artistic voice that you have. And it makes it more challenging for them to read who you are.
We have a comment from Pachi. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. I've been watching your videos for the past month to help me with my fine art portfolio, and you guys have really helped me. Thank you, and hello from Costa Rica. Well, very cool. We're so happy to hear that because I do know that there's not a lot of reliable guidance about art school portfolios online. So hopefully we can help that. Now, here's the thing though. Lauryn, is there anything wrong with drawing fan art? Is there anything wrong with anime? Because that's oftentimes the message people hear, which is fan art bad, anime bad. I don't think that's the case at all. Like, we have lots of fan art that Jordan made to show you guys. So Lauryn, where does fan art fit if you're somebody who does it?
Fan art is a good place to enjoy yourself, to work on technical skills that maybe you don't quite have enough control over yet, to just experiment. But it's, as far as a portfolio goes, it isn't hitting all of the boxes that you need for a portfolio. I would consider fan art more of a practice than a finished product. I don't know, Jordan, how do you use fan art within the context of your studio practice?
Right. So when I did these drawings that we're looking at specifically, it was purely to just get that practice. I was actually watching YouTube videos that taught me how to draw these along the side. And so I wanted to improve in line weight. I wanted to understand construction. And I also kind of just wanted to draw my favorite characters. So that helped me out a lot where I could focus on the more technical aspect rather than the creative aspect. As far as today, it's still very similar. There are times where I'm trying to learn a new style, and so I'll draw the character of a style that I'm not particularly used to, and it helps me grow as an artist. But I don't tend to put it places where a lot of people can see.
Yeah, Jordan, that actually brings up a really good point. I would liken fan art to, in the painting world, we do a kind of fan art too. It's just master copies of an artist that we really like. Like, I've done master copies of Bernard because he's my favorite artist and I think he's amazing and I love all his paintings. That is a kind of fan art, but I'm using it as a way to practice the skills that I most love about Bernard.
And I would say pretty much everybody on our staff has at some point done fan art and master copies. Like Kat's bio stream, if you guys watch it, she does talk about the role of fan art in her artistic development. So tell us in the chat, number one, do you guys do fan art? And has it been helpful to you and how? Because some people say to me, some students, they say, you know what, it just makes me feel good. And it's like, great, if it makes you feel good and it's fun and you're practicing, that's totally fine. It's just it does not belong in your art school portfolio. So we're not saying don't do it. We're just saying there's a time and a place for it, and your portfolio is not the place. Poor photos of your artwork. This is one that happens all the time in art school portfolios. So Jordan, why do you think this happens so often?
I think a lot of it comes down to just not thinking about it. So we think that if we just put our image in there, the committee or whoever's going to look at it will automatically know what we're talking about, what we're trying to show. When in reality, when you get poor lighting and there's a big shadow of your hand casting your hand across the thing, it just makes it for a really terrible experience, and it lacks professionalism. And I think that's the biggest issue with taking poor photos.
Guataveras, sorry for the pronunciation, is fan art of classic stories, for example, ballet or fairy tales, allowed? Lauryn, what's your take on that?
I wish we had Alex on the stream because I feel like this is something that he would be able to answer very well. I think that if you can do it in a way that shows a personal spin on it, that shows your conceptual muscles in a little bit, that does not come through necessarily and say copying a picture of your favorite character, that shows other stuff going on in the background. So I would say yes, that is probably permissible in this case.
I mean, I think that's an excellent question. And the way that I would answer it is that if you think about a character like Mickey Mouse or SpongeBob is drawn a particular way. Not everybody has 5,000 interpretations of SpongeBob over the last 20 centuries, right? There's a particular look. However, if you think about a character like Snow White has been interpreted and drawn in millions of different ways over the centuries. And so it's a different type of thing because the character has a type of history. And like Lauryn says, if you're doing your own take on that character, I think that's totally fine. Now, most of us here at Art Prof were guilty in our own art school portfolios of not taking a good photo. So, Lauryn, Exhibit A, what were you thinking with this photo?
Well, I would still say that I am three-dimensionally challenged. I still can't take a good 3D photo. I haven't really learned much from this, but this was one of the first, I'm going to say, jewelry or 3D pieces that I ever made. So the only thing I was thinking about was scale. I need to show the scale of this and not lighting or background or anything else. That really just didn't even cross my mind. And yes, I am very embarrassed by it now. But I don't know, Jordan, didn't you have trouble with 3D?
You're on mute.
I am. Oh, yeah, Lauryn, your mic got muted. Anyway, Jordan, why don't you talk about bad photos?
For me, I never really considered how to take photos. I was just thinking if it's straight, if it's aligned all right, and if it's lit well, then it's fine. I never considered cropping. I never considered saturation. Those were actually things that I had to learn later on down the line, and so I had to make a lot of those adjustments. When it came to 3D artwork, I actually just avoided 3D artwork in general. Now I think about it, I don't think I had any in my portfolio because it just wasn't my interest. So I know Lauren's kind of on her own with that one.
Oh.
And we see here, Jordan, you were guilty of a bad photo of your drawing. The thing about these photos, you guys, is you want them to accurately represent your artwork, because if you've got a big gray shadow over the top, it's a really big distraction. And sometimes it can make the artwork super confusing. Like, Lauryn, looking at this image, what media would you guess this is in?
Looks like markers or maybe gouache or something on a piece of paper. What is it?
And how big in your head do you imagine this to be?
No bigger than, what is it, 11 by 17.
You know what's crazy? This is a mural. Like, it's like 5 feet tall. And so the thing is, the person that shot the photo, they didn't take a photo of the mural in context. And so the issue is people just completely misread it. And so I said to the artist, listen, you have to have like a person in front of the mural so we can really understand what it is, because I totally misread this 100%.
I've got
Amaris is saying,
oops. Go ahead.
Amaris is saying, master copying art is a great way to improve, but also put it to use with your own reference photo. Is that what you're saying? Jordan, why don't you take this?
Yeah, so when we're talking about master copies in the context of, you know, the stream, it's more for skill building. It's how did this artist use color? How did this artist create a dynamic composition and, you know, get the mark making and all those types of things. When you understand that, it's much easier to take reference photos of from, you know, life and nature. Let's say you live by a park or whatever. You can use those same technical principles and apply them to your current work.
So getting back to the poor photography, it is all the difference in the world, you guys. For example, this is the same architectural model on the left-hand side as what you see on the right-hand side. I mean, Lauryn, don't these look like two different pieces?
Oh my God, I think that second piece is so dynamic. It feels like a really professional looking photo that I'd see in a magazine or something. And then the first piece really feels like a student piece. I can't believe they're the same piece.
I just figured that out. I didn't know that at all.
That's incredible.
That's how dramatic the difference can be. And so I would recommend you guys that you take a look at what is possible. Like this photo, to some people, they might say, oh, it's fine, I can see the artwork. But look at what happens when you crop the image and you desaturate it. These are two very quick fixes that make the artwork a lot better. A lot of people think that photographing artwork, that to get good quality images, it takes longer. It actually doesn't. The difference is that you just really have to know what you need to do.
There's this great question here by a cat soft nose, which, by the way, I love that username. How do you frame drawings without frames again? If I remember you talking about using clips or push pins to hold the edges of the paper to the wall. It makes photographing easier, it seems. How do we photograph paper, guys?
I mean, what I usually do is I just take blue painter's tape, put it on the back of the drawing, stick it on a drawing board, and go from there. I mean, you only need the drawing to be on the wall or drawing board for about a minute so you can take the picture. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy at all. It could be very, very straightforward. So for those of you guys who need help, I would recommend watching this video. It's pretty comprehensive in terms of 2D and 3D artwork. Now, here's another example, is copying someone else's photo verbatim. Jordan, what do you think is the issue here?
So this is funny because I was just discussing this earlier today with another group of people. And I think the issue when copying photos is too many people are slaves to the reference, where they take no artistic license whatsoever. They don't push the lighting, they don't change the color, they don't change the face or the expression. And there's just not enough of you as an artist in it when you're copying that photo exactly as it's laid out.
Yeah. And so we're not saying, you guys, you should never ever draw from a photo. But Lauryn, what's the difference between really copying a photo and using a photo as reference?
With just copying the photo, the only thing that you're demonstrating is mimesis, like how good you can get at copying the photo, which is one specific technical skill. It doesn't really involve the multiple skills that are needed that you could demonstrate in using multiple photos that you put together into your own referenced composition. Like, again, it's about these, these are not necessarily conceptual skills, but compositional skills that are really important to being an artist, a working artist in the professional world.
And we have a question from Sini. How much can you edit the photo you have taken? Example, if it is done on pencil, you increase the contrast of the photo even if the actual drawing does not have a strong contrast. Well, what do you think about that, Jordan?
I think you should do whatever you need to make a better looking image. If you don't have strong enough contrast in the photo, and there have been times where I've tried, and if I increase the contrast too much, it actually messes up the reference and I can't see it, I'll just fix it in the drawing, because I know that it's something I need to do and I know it's going to help. So, you know, again, don't be a slave to the reference. If you know this color isn't going to work, or you don't have, or you want it to be more monochromatic or whatever, just change it and experiment. And if you fail, so what? Make another painting or make another drawing or whatever.
Yeah, actually, Cindy, I've got a great example of this too. I went to school with another painter who would take his reference photos and then Photoshop them together into absolutely crazy compositions, totally nuts, totally taken out of the previous context, and then paint from those Photoshopped images. So you can really go ham on it, take it as far as you want, and it's still total, like, really, like, perfect. You can do that.
I'm actually going to guess that I think Sini's talking about a photo of the artwork, not a reference photo. Sini, you can correct us if we're wrong, but I will give you the other version of the answer, which is that if you take a photograph of an oil painting you made and you make the contrast look better and you change the saturation so the colors are more vibrant than they actually are, you're not representing your artwork accurately. And I would do what Jordan said, which is if you have bad contrast, then do better on your drawings. Like, you shouldn't be fixing your artwork with photo editing. You're really striving for accuracy when you're photographing your artwork. That's a really good question, if I interpreted it correctly. I don't know. One of us was correct. But anyway, you got both answers now, which I think works fine.
Steve says, yes, I meant the artwork. So it's okay. You got it.
Oh, well, then there's a great point to this too, and that is some schools, at least in master's level, and I think some BFA programs as well, require you to show the wall around your artwork so that they can see that you're not oversaturating or changing things up too much. Like, they want to see the objectness of the piece. So that's also something to consider.
Well, so Moonbeam is saying, like, can you improve on your image by Photoshopping it? Now, here's the thing. You can. I mean, nobody's going to know if you go in and you make everything better. But in my opinion, you're digging your own grave. Because if you decide you want to cheat like that, you're not really gaining the skills to make that real artwork. And then what are you going to do when people actually have to see the real thing? Then you're totally screwed. So in my opinion, this is a bad idea. I can see the temptation to want to do it, but I don't think that's a good move.
We should talk about what is improving the image that you've taken, the photograph that you've taken, versus improving the actual artwork through Photoshop, because some really common things that need to be done when you're taking photos of your artwork is that there's usually a little bit of a fisheye, so you want to pull the corners so everything looks straight. You want to make sure that the lighting actually reflects the artwork, so you will have to change the white balance on it. These are things that are totally okay to do. Where things go bad is when you're actually changing things and misrepresenting what the artwork looks like in person.
Let's talk about confusing slide formats, because sometimes you do want to have more than one image on a single slide. Maybe the pieces are related to each other. But Jordan, what's wrong with the slide that we're looking at here?
I I can't really tell why they're all connected. I can see they're all small sculptures, but it's not like a comic where I can just read panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. It's just a big mess of images. I'm not really sure how they all relate to each other.
Or sometimes you have something like this, which is almost the opposite problem. Lauryn, what's the issue with the formatting? There are 4 different images, but it's not a good slide.
No, it looks like they should be all one single image because they're done on the same color paper, but the lighting is different in each one, so there's this weird in-between thing going on.
And then sometimes you can have images that maybe on their own look great. I mean, these are all really beautiful illustrations, the individual images, but the thing is they don't have anything to do with each other. Like, I would say the top 6 would look great together on a slide, but the thing is you look at the 3 in the bottom and it's like, what? Like, what's the relationship? And so I would just say, try not to stuff too many things. Like, Jordan, is the issue here the original individual artworks, or is it just a formatting thing here?
It's a formatting thing. There's so much to look at in these 9 images, and I'm almost overwhelmed. And I would rather see these pieces either one side by side or just individually by themselves. I think even that would be better.
Here's a great related, oh, you've got a comment. Do that first.
Sorry. Amaris is asking, what should be in a basic comic portfolio? Well, Amaris, if you are applying for a BFA, which is an undergraduate program, there's no comic portfolio. You just apply to get into the school. That means that no matter what you're going into, architecture, illustration, whatever, you apply with the same types of requirements as everybody else. Now, that doesn't mean you can't include comics in your portfolio. You totally can, but you don't want to have a portfolio that's like 20 comics. You want to have a lot more diversity than that.
Wait,
okay, let's...
Here.
Okay.
I mean, it has to do with the last slide there. For a couple of artworks, I was following a tutorial. I feel like these pieces were successful enough to include, but now I'm wondering if I shouldn't have done that. What if someone on the admissions department is an art prof fanatic and sees that I did it from a class session, or they watch fantasy instructional artists? Are these pieces that are done from tutorials that say, you do from art prof, are those okay to include in your portfolio, Clara?
I think it's fine. I mean, it's like if you went to an art class and you made a project in person, is it less legitimate because you did it from an online portfolio? I don't think so. I think it's making artwork under instruction. I mean, who hasn't done that? Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, the thing about applying to art school is the goal of the school is to help you grow as an artist. They don't expect you to know everything before you apply there, otherwise there'd be no need for the school. So while we have a lot of tips and we're trying to help you as much as we can, I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed to the point of being petrified about whether or not you should have submitted something that's already said and done.
Okay, let's talk about centered compositions. Again, we are not trying to say centered compositions are always bad, because you can definitely have a centered composition that works really well. However, it's not an accident that most of the art school portfolios I've reviewed over the years have all centered compositions and portraits. Lauryn, why do you think that is? Why are there so many like this in art school portfolios?
I think when a student is first starting out, and honestly, it's something that I still do as a person that's been in the profession for how many years now, it's really easy to put the subject in the center. It's a natural thing to want to do. But the thing is that a lot of the times this is unconsidered. This is just done because you're thinking intuitively and not because you're thinking really carefully about how to piece a composition together. So we see a lot of these portfolios where people just throw stuff in the center over and over and over again.
And Jordan, why is composition important? Why does it matter where you put things in your image? Because composition to me is oftentimes an invisible skill. A lot of people just don't even think about it. So why does composition matter?
Composition is important because that's primarily it's the most basic piece of part of your artwork. When you're creating anything, whether it's a landscape of some trees and rocks or a human figure, the composition is what's going to help make that piece strong. And I think part of the reason so many people end up making a certain composition is because it's the safest option. And a lot of people are kind of psyching themselves out, like, oh, if I put it way up here in the corner, or in this area, it's going to be too stark, it's going to be too different, so I need to put it in the center. That way everything is safe, you can see everything. And that ends up being oftentimes the one of the worst ideas that you can do. Not all the time, you can definitely do center compositions, but it's not always the best choice.
Blue Wolf Spirit is agreeing with you. If you put it off center, you have a lot more work to do, both in composition and in the work itself. Clara, isn't it much harder to make a composition when it's all unbalanced, or when you're putting the subject somewhere else?
It is, but it's also, I think, more exciting because it's not so predictable. I think that's my issue with centered compositions, is oftentimes it's symmetrical, both sides look the same, starts to get really boring after a little while. So composition is hard. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. There is no formula for how to do it, but I would say just being aware of composition, that is like half the battle. A lot of people don't even think about it. So that's really the main thing. Bountiful is saying, is there a basis on what to put in your portfolio, like how much to put in? Jordan, what do you think?
So first of all, when you apply to different art schools, they'll tell you how many artworks to put in. They'll say 12 to 20 or something like that. And as far as what to put in your portfolio, your best work. So if you have 30 pieces and you need to narrow it down to 20, then you need to kick some stuff out. You need to really analyze, say this is piece A and piece B. And, sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes you have to go, put this, and you have to really weigh out those pros and cons. So only put your best work in there. And, if you have something that's more experimental that you feel like could be cool to show, then that's fine. But always your best work.
Next thing to avoid, empty backgrounds. And again, we're not trying to say you can never, ever make a white background, because sometimes the artwork really does need that. But this is really similar to the centered composition thing, which is that I see this all the time in art school portfolios where people have clearly spent a lot of time and effort in the subject, but have left the background totally white. So, Lauryn, why do you think this might be a problem in a lot of these pieces?
I do want to say that it's not just whiteness, because whiteness can be very dynamic and interesting. It's also the blankness. It's the blankness of the page. The page has not been touched by anything at all. And this is an issue because it means that you are not thinking fully, generally speaking, about the entire page, the entire composition. In art school, you learn that the artwork is not just the subject that you're drawing or painting or sculpting or whatever. It is the whole material that you're working with, and also even the space around the material and the way that it is installed. So it just means that you need to think beyond the actual subject matter.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, why do you think so many people in high school end up with white backgrounds like the ones we're looking at right now?
I think it's similar to the composition issue, where a lot of people are just used to being safe and they don't want to take the risk of getting the perspective wrong on their background or coming up with a whole world for whatever this art is to exist in. And I think it's more of a mental issue than anything, or a mental block, maybe is a better way to put it. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest thing.
Oh.
I have to say, though, I think Neil explains it the best. It's because we're lazy. It's true, though. A lot of people don't want to bother with the background because backgrounds are hard. Lauryn, why is it easier for people to just say, I'm skipping out on this in terms of the background?
I mean, when you're thinking, let's take this piece, for example, right here that we've got. That is what, 5 by 5 or 7 by 7 inches of work that you're thinking about, but the paper is what, 9 by 12. That means that you are just deciding to skip out on half the paper or 40% of the paper and just not include it at all, but yeah, include it in the photo. It's just a weird thing to do given you have all this empty space around.
And I like this comment from, oh, I guess I just lost it. Oh, here it is. Maribel says, when are some situations when a white background might be good? Jordan, what do you think?
Honestly, the first thing I thought about is the scene in the film The Matrix where Morpheus is showing Neo all the stuff that can happen, and it's just a white background. And in the context of that story and what they're trying to say, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess really whenever you make these decisions, they have to make sense with the story you're telling. The image we just saw just had 2 hands cut off at the wrist. It's not like they were, cut off violently or anything. It just stopped there. And maybe it worked for the story, but maybe it didn't. Oftentimes it's something that doesn't work. And
wait, sorry. Finish. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the things about art schools, it is oftentimes very, very competitive. And when you're applying, you don't want to give the committee a reason to say no to you. So a lot of these things we're sharing is stuff to help you guys so that they will say no a lot slower than they would the next person.
That's a great point, Jordan. I also have this comment here from AJ who says backgrounds aren't the most exciting thing to make. I think that's why we tend not to make them. And this is a comment that makes me feel so sad in my life. It's the same comment that I see for people talking about doing still lives where they don't like them because it's boring. We need to get beyond this mentality that a background is a hassle or a still life is a task. You have to start thinking, wow, this background is really an opportunity for me to make something really interesting, for me to twist the story around into something else, or for me to make it really at odds with the subject. Like, your background is not unimportant because it's in the back. It is just as important as your subject matter and can elevate the entire piece. Like, Clara, don't you love backgrounds? What do you do for backgrounds?
I mean, a background is everything. For example, if I have a painting of Jordan and Jordan is in a rainforest, that's a different story than if Jordan is on the planet Mars. It's a completely different image. So you have to think about those backgrounds as not just, oh, I got to fill up a space. It's actually telling a story in a way. And you know something, AJ, you know why they're not exciting? Because you think they're not exciting. You have to take the initiative to say, you know, wow, like Lauryn said, this is a chance for me to do something really fun. So if you decide it's boring, it's going to be boring. And it's your fault. I'm sorry. Vincent is saying, I have a question about putting background with pen and ink. Why is it that it is more appealing for me or most pen and ink works to not have backgrounds? What do you think about that, Jordan?
Could be just personal preference. I mean, some people like certain things and some people don't. Like, some people like pickles, and I think pickles are disgusting. So,
I love pickles.
Yeah, see, perfect example. Birthday twin, and I don't agree on everything. So, so I think it might just be a matter of personal taste, but that doesn't mean you should always avoid backgrounds. And I say this from personal experience. I always try to avoid it, but I recently tried watching some of my favorite films again and just studying their backgrounds, and I recognize now how gorgeous some of those things are, and I have missed out on all those years worth of potentially building my skill when I was just like, nah, those things, that's not for me. So don't fall into that trap.
The next mistake we're going to talk about is getting feedback from your family and friends. And I understand this impulse, why you would want to ask your mom or whoever for feedback on your artwork, because obviously they're there. And honestly, a lot of high school students who are applying for BFA programs don't have people who are professional artists who can critique their artwork. So it's not always the easiest thing to find. But Lauryn, what's the problem here with feedback from family and friends?
Generally speaking, your family and friends are not applying for an art degree, you're applying for an art degree. And being not very experienced in that area, you can't necessarily rely on them for the best advice. It's like the equivalent of asking your parents who majored in a totally different thing for help with your calculus homework. Like, if they don't know calculus, they can't help you, really.
Like me.
I don't remember any calculus. But, like, Jordan, have you ever had any really off-the-wall comments from your family and friends about your portfolio?
Off-the-wall comments. Well, there was that story the first time I did figure drawing. Clara knows that one, where it's an uncomfortable story. But a lot of the time when it comes to family and friends and people who don't know a lot about art, a lot of times you're the only artist that they know. So their barometer of how high you can go in the art world is you, and you are trying to get to a higher place. So for you to always ask their opinion and take their word as, the best, all the advice you need, that can be detrimental to your artistic growth. And I remember one teacher telling me, or the class one time, that the teacher is there to kick you in the butt to improve your art, and your mom is there to give you the pat on the back. So
AJ is saying, because of my age, all my family is like, oh, that's great, that's good. Really, only my older brothers and older sisters really, quote, critique my work. Even still, not the best advice. I mean, I actively try not to ever ask them for help. And so what I would recommend you guys do, if you need help with your work, we have so many critique channels in the Art Prof Discord, and they're extremely active. We have moderators in there who give really good advice. And I think you guys will find that people are very supportive of each other in the Discord. And by the way, tell us in the chat if you have ever posted work for critique in our Discord before, if that was helpful to you, because I think what's nice about this community is that we have so many people of different ages and backgrounds. You'll get many different points of view, and that's very important. Now, the other thing you guys can do is from now through March, we are giving people the opportunity to receive a free portfolio critique to be critiqued live here on YouTube. So you guys can submit, and the link is in the video description below. And you can also get a YouTube live critique on a single artwork as opposed to the whole portfolio. And the link for that is also in the description below. Next topic is obvious art class projects. Lauryn, what do we mean by this? Because we just told you guys, hey, it's okay to make a project in art class and put it in, but why this particular type?
There are art class projects or art tutorial projects which allow you some amount of conceptual freedom and technical freedom. And then there are art projects that give you a series of steps and you follow those steps to create a nice artwork. And I think these are the ones that we're talking about, where your instructions are very narrow and you follow those to the T, and it doesn't really showcase your personal styles or abilities, and it doesn't really showcase the conceptual skills that you have gained over your time in high school.
And I find that oftentimes the way to gauge, is this a good art project or not, is when you're in an art class and you get the project and almost everybody's project looks the same. Like, Jordan, between these two collages, can you tell who is Sarah and who is John, even though they're imaginary people I just made up? Like, do they look distinctive? Can you see the artistic vision in both of these?
No, not at all.
So, Lauryn, this is actually a project that you gave to some of your students. And again, we're not saying these art projects are not helpful. It's just they're not good for the portfolio. So, Lauryn, what was this project?
This project was during a teen class that I taught, where we made really funny collages as teams, and then we cut them up and hid the pieces around our town and had to create scavenger hunts for the other team to find the pieces and put them together. So it was really fun for that specific thing. And a lot of the little collage bits in there are hilarious, but they're not really indicative of a personal vision of any of the artists that were involved.
I really like this question from Sarah, who's saying art projects are nice starters, but they only ask the quote, what you'll be creating, not the quote, why. I mean, it depends on the project. Sometimes you have projects that are really open-ended and you really can make it your own. But other times there are projects that are just so specific that it's hard to put in any of your vision. And so I would just really try to recognize that. And Lauryn, isn't this your worst offender or somebody who loves patterns?
It makes me so mad. I've seen so many of these in portfolios. As someone who is obsessed with patterns and uses them all the time in my work, the Zentangle movement is killing me. It's where people fill up a page as a relaxation technique with different kinds of patterns that are generally fairly simple and not thought about in a larger compositional or idealistic sense. And they always show up in student portfolios. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't recommend this, guys. It's dime a dozen right now. By the way, I just want to clear this up. AJ is saying, wait, Jordan has a Discord group? Jordan, as far as I know, you don't. But Jordan did establish a channel in our Discord, which is called the 2500 Challenge. And actually back here, Johnny's saying critiques from the Discord challenge made me aware of weaknesses in my drawing that I was blind to. So it's a channel in our Discord that you guys can go check out later on. All right, cliche images. We're going to touch on this, and at some point we'll probably do a more substantial stream. But Jordan, why is a pencil drawing of an eye a cliche in high school?
You know, whenever I see an eye drawing, just a single eye, I always think of people drawing in class. The first thing, I don't know why everyone thinks to do this, but it's always an eye with like the most singular lashes ever. Like there's no sort of consistency to it. And so it's one of those images that just doesn't take a whole lot of thought. It doesn't have a really strong concept behind it. It's more, here's an eye. What are you saying about the eye? I don't know. It's an eye and it's in my portfolio. So there you go. So.
And Lauryn, I would say, how many drawings have we seen of a person crouched in a corner with their head down, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner? Have you seen that image before?
Oh, yes. This is such a trope, guys, that in some admission circles, there are games about how many times they see this particular type of moody self-portrait image. Like, we get it, you're moody, you're an artist. All artists are a little bit moody, so you don't need to put it in your self-portrait, at least not in this way.
And Jordan, how about this one? It says, my body, my decision, my rules. Why might this come across as cliche? It's a little different because it's not so much the image as much as it is the topic and the words that sort of screams cliche.
Yeah, so the phrases that are being used are, one, very, very popular. It's something that you would hear often. And I feel like the image is not necessarily reflecting the mood of what it's trying to say. It feels a little disjointed to me, at least. So when you're talking about these really heavy subjects, I think a lot of thought needs to go into it to make sure you're being clever with it, that you're saying whatever it is you want to say, and that it just has the biggest impact it can possibly create.
And then, I'm sorry guys, but these Snapchat filter portraits, not happening. Lauryn, why should we avoid this?
Because you just took a picture of yourself and did a swirly filter on your phone. What does this mean, guys? What does it mean? I know that it's included in like Teen Vogue and some really too cool for school art galleries these days, but don't give into that. Don't copy that, please. You have too much soul to give into that.
She's like,
I mean, what I would do, you guys, if you're wondering what is a cliche for, say, a self-portrait, just Google high school self-portrait pencil drawing and see what pops up. I think you'll find that a lot of them look extremely similar to each other. Now, if you guys have not seen, we do have on artprof.org a complete art school portfolios guide. So you want to go to tutorials and project ideas. And if you look under the art school category, you will see the complete art school portfolios guide. This is where I would begin, because a lot of the information that we're giving you guys is on this page. And I think this will give you guys a really good starting point. And I would suggest that you guys watch a bunch of our other art school portfolio critiques. And also, if you can, listen to us on Spotify and also on iTunes, because we have a podcast, and especially in Discord. Join the Discord, get into the critique channels, ask us for help. And we are going to be over there in about 5 minutes. Me, Jordan, and Lauryn, we're going to be chatting in the post live streams channel, because there were so many comments today and questions that I didn't get to half of them. So if you guys have questions, we're definitely going to be over there very soon for you guys to ask us more questions. Subscribe to our channel and join the Art Prof family. And as always, thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who keep us up and running. Thank you to everybody for all your questions and your comments. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.